Here we go. Let's speak geek.
You're listening to the Geek Speak Radio Show
On the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Geek Speak Radio Show. How you doing? I'm Henry. Romo's not here. Not because he's scared. Halloween's over now, so no, he's not scared because of that. He actually sent me a text seconds before I started the theme here, and he's down the street. There's a public library right down the street from the studio here, and he's actually picking a book for the Geek Speak Radio Show book club, which we'll do later on in the show. So he'll be here momentarily, but I am here. Hi, I'm Henry. And like I said, yeah, Halloween is over, and before we completely finish, let me say congratulations one more time to Lion Bellamy Chew from Hercules. He won the Our House is Scarier Than Yours contest. Any story really with dolls is automatically going to win a contest like that. So his story won. So Lion Bellamy Chew, congratulations. 4 VIP passes to the Curse of Sarah Winchester Maze, which he did use this past weekend. Matter of fact, congratulations to some of our Twitter followers who won VIP passes. We were there. We met up with some of you. We actually went through the maze with a few of you. Really fun. It was really fun watching you guys jump, cry, try to crawl out of the maze, but props to you. You all made it through. So thanks a lot again, and very, very big special thank you to Shozo Kagoshima and also Lindsay Hubman from the Winchester Mystery House. First, for inviting us to the Curse of Sarah Winchester Maze and letting us see it before anybody else, and also for giving us passes to share with all of you. Can't wait to do it again next year. But we are drawing close to next year. We are coming up to the end of 2011, and in the spirit of giving, holidays that are coming up, we're going to give you some more things. Not Winchester Mystery House, did that already. This time around, we're going to wish upon a star. Okay, enough hints. I mean, those of you that went on our Facebook page earlier this week, I think you know what we're talking about. We're going to have passes for the Walt Disney Family Museum here in San Francisco. It's at the Presidio in San Francisco. Very, very cool place, very informative place, especially if you're a Walt Disney fan. Disney, and especially Walt Disney, the man fan. Didn't mean to rhyme there, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And those of you who are Disney fans, who think you know a lot about Walt Disney, put it to use, and it will get you tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum. The entire month of November, we'll be doing trivia questions. 4 trivia questions. I'll ask them on the show. I'll post them also on our Facebook page. All you have to do is answer those 4 questions correctly. We'll pick a random winner each week in November and give you 4 tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum and also a very special Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. So again, all you got to do, answer 4 trivia questions. Like, for example, what was Mickey Mouse's original name? Don't say that in case somebody's sitting there next to you who doesn't know. You don't want them to win those tickets, do you? But again, you're gonna get 4 tickets, so you're probably gonna take them with you. But that's an easy one. I'll make them a little bit hard, and most of them will be about Walt Disney, not really about Disney movies, although those will be thrown in there also. So that's what's happening. Again, go to the GeekSpeakRadioShow.com webpage. It's all on there. So let's get to this episode. Again, Romo's not here. He'll be here momentarily. He's down the street at the library getting a book for the Geek Speak Radio Show book club. But what we're going to do is introduce you to the stars of tomorrow. And what I mean by stars is not just actors, but writers, artists, authors, and visual effects artists. And we're also going to talk to the people who show these people how to do it, especially the visual effects artist. Because with the proliferation of 3D and the advancements in video games, we've come a long way from when I used to play Atari. I'll tell you that. There are people who have to actually animate these things. Batman Arkham City, you've all played it a few times by now. There's people who actually had to animate Batman and Hugo Strange and Joker and everything that went in there. We're going to talk to some of those artists and also the people who taught them how to do that in just a few minutes. We're also going to talk to an author/writer who has a very, very cool and geeky twist on the story of Beowulf. So let me take a quick break right now, and when we come back, I'll start introducing you to the people who make what we geek out about.
The Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.
What do you really know about the life of Walt Disney? Okay, you may know some things about Mickey and Disneyland, but if you think you know more than that, feel free to say something now. We thought so. If you want to get to know the Walt and Disney, the risk-taking and always inventive man behind the magic, visit the Walt Disney Family Museum, filled with interactive stories, movies, music, and original animation in the Presidio, San Francisco.
So how much do you know about Walt Disney? Everyone knows Mickey, but do you know his birthday? The name of Walt Disney's first animation studio? Here's a hint. It wasn't the Walt Disney Studios. Your knowledge of everything Disney will get you a family fun pack, which includes a visit to the Walt Disney Family Museum at the Presidio in San Francisco and a Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Just answer 4 Disney trivia questions and you may be one of the random weekly winners chosen throughout the month of November. The questions will be asked on the show and posted on the Geek Speak Radio Show Facebook page. Just post your correct answers and you may be the lucky winner of 4 tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum and a special Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Plus, you'll get to see the new Disney Artists Holiday Wishes exhibition, making its debut this month. Get all the details at geekspeakradioshow.com.
This is the show where you hear everything geek culture.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Now back to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
And we're back on the Geek Speak Radio Show. No more Halloween stuff, no more scary stuff. Romo's not here. He's out looking for a book again for the book club, which we'll do later in the show. So like I said, we are going to talk today to a lot of up-and-coming writers, actors even. We got a couple of those coming on. Up-and-coming stars. One of the biggest things going on today is in the 3D movement is visual effects. A lot of the movies that we talk about on this very show deal with visual effects. So I figured, let's start where else? In Hollywood. There's a school there that shows you how to do this called the Gnomon School. And on the line, we have Brian Bradford, who is the director of admissions for the Gnomon School. Brian, welcome to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Hey, thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about the Gnomon School.
Well, Gnomon School of Visual Effects, we're in Hollywood, California, where the bulk of production on film and games still exists. We started in 1997 founded by Alex Alvarez, who was an applications engineer for a software company that was producing 3D software during the rise of 3D computer graphics, when you really started to see them in movies like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 and Toy Story, at this time when it was just starting to pop up on everybody's radar. And what Alex would do is he would go to different studios and train on these softwares. And what he found was that people lacked not only a deeper technical depth when it came to these softwares, but they also lacked a stronger art foundation. So in creating the Gnomon School of Visual Effects, what Alex was essentially doing was creating a school that he had wished existed when he went to school, that fused the traditional foundation art education with something that was much more technical and much more relevant to the types of jobs that were out there. Since 1997, obviously, we've grown quite a bit, and we've developed, and we're currently doing really well as the premier visual effects school, bringing people into this environment, having had maybe not a lot of art training, or potentially something like a case where they've come from other art degrees, but are essentially looking for a way to get into the kinds of jobs that have inspired them to pursue art from the beginning. The studios like Blizzard and Pixar and Disney, and learn the skill sets to be able to get a job directly out of school. We've been able to be really successful at that, given where we're at, given the resources that we have here, and given our curriculum. Our placement rate is over 93% and has never dropped below 90% in the 14 years we've been doing this. So it's not only a really effective way to transition into this industry, but it's also a really great creative environment for artists if they are looking to further their education and make careers for themselves.
Yeah, and I know you don't want to speak for Alex, but would it be fair to say that before the Gnomon School, it was basically there were probably some classes in normal colleges, but they weren't getting the complete picture, like you said, like Alex said actually. There were artists there, but they didn't understand the technical side of it. Was that the main drive behind the Gnomon School?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, not to speak for him, but I've heard him, talk to me about what the climate was for him trying to get into this field at the time, and at the time to operate some of this software was up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the machines, that just to buy one machine with the software to do this stuff. So almost completely inaccessible to just the average person wanting to learn this. And as far as schools go, yeah, you can forget about it. It just wasn't really on their radar. And if it was, it may have been one or two classes that really just touched upon it. And that's kind of what he found in the studio environment too. Even though these were big studios making movies, the scope of their knowledge was so small that it was just kind of a no-brainer. Hey, if I can get something together where I can get this software and teach people, it could be really successful. And he was right.
Yeah, and Alex Alvarez is not just some guy who's this is a hobby to him. He actually worked on a little movie you guys may have heard of, Avatar. So
right, I think I might have heard of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing about the school. I mean, Alex's passion for art and for this industry has really trickled down. Everybody, from senior management here to just the people that are answering phones, everybody here has an art background, which is really great, and it really lends itself, I think, to a school environment that people are not used to. Alex remains really active in production. When he sees a really cool project that he can't turn away, he'll walk away from the school for 6 months and be on that project, and that's something that I think is really evident when you walk around here, is that the people here are not just a bunch of suits that are running this for-profit college, but it's really a labor of love from Alex down to everybody who works here.
Yeah, we're talking to Brian Bradford, who's Director of Admissions at the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. Got a link up on our links section, thegnomonschool.com, if you want to go there directly. So let's get into the school itself now, Brian. What courses are offered at Gnomon?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, it's obviously, when we're talking about foundation art and we're talking about computer graphics, we do cover a pretty wide gamut. In terms of traditional art, or else, also known as like the foundation of this education, it's kind of a combination between the typical art classes that you'd find at most schools, like anatomy and perspective and color theory, combined with something that's much more industry specific in regards to the entertainment industry, like character design, storyboarding, environment design, vehicle design. And that really encompasses the majority of our traditional classes. So it's kind of a streamlined approach at getting an art education and having it very much skewed toward how art is being used for the visual effects and entertainment industry. On the technical side, it's a lot of software classes, softwares including Maya, Photoshop, Nuke, Houdini. The list goes on, and it's really about the most relevant softwares that are being used today, and that's really what we're focusing on. And in between that, we have a lot of lecture-based classes too that are more conceptual. One class we have that's very popular is called Overview of Visual Effects. It's not even an art class, but what students do in that class is they literally go on field trips to 6, 7, or 8 really successful high-profile film and game studios during this 10-week course. And, for instance, Blizzard or DreamWorks, Disney, Rhythm and Hughes. And they go on a field trip, a private field trip, by the way. These studios are not normally, doing this sort of thing.
Right.
And basically talk to the art directors. They talk to the people that are working there in production. But more importantly, that they see what people are doing. They see the industry. They see the production pipeline, and it really gives them a better idea of where they see themselves fitting into all this, as they go through the classes here and as they make the decisions that are going to impact, what their work looks like and what their skill set is at the end of this sort of thing. So these classes can be taken individually as well as in a full-time accredited program.
And when a student does come to Gnomon, can they take, I'll word it as a generic class, or do they tailor it to, let's say, if they want to do video games or visual effects or something else entirely?
Well, there's a lot of common classes that would really apply to both of those situations. So for instance, you would need to take the generic classes before you branched out into video games or film. because so many of the basic concepts are identical. It doesn't really start getting different and start breaking away until much later on in the education when things become a lot more technical. So, and that's, I think, convenient for people coming in. You know, you might know if you want to do games or film, but you may not know which part of the pipeline you're really even good at or that you really like doing for hours on end. And part of this experience is learning that. You know, it's not just learning the software, but it's learning how you like the software and how, you know, what you can actually do for long periods of time and be successful at. So a lot of this is kind of taking samples of what types of jobs are out there, and seeing, you know, what areas really speak to you and what you want to pursue. So somebody coming in here saying, hey, I have a general idea that I want to be in this industry, but don't really know exactly where I fit in, that would be a prime candidate to just take one or two basic courses, kind of get a feel for this stuff before making any bigger decisions. And that's another, I think, exceptional thing about Gnomon is that we really do embrace this idea of coming in here and transitioning into this education slowly and carefully, rather than just signing up for some big, you know, 3 or 4 year program right off the bat. We want you to really test drive this as much as possible before making any big commitments.
How many students are enrolled at Gnomon?
Usually anywhere between 300 and 350 per term. We're on a quarter basis, so we have 4 quarters a year. Of those, let's say it's closer to 350, so of those 350, about a third of them are in full-time accredited programs that you would need to apply to get accepted into, and 2/3 are people that are just taking individual courses.
Is the length of the program for a year, or about how long do the students stay?
Well, we have a couple different ones, but coming at this from the very beginning, you know, if you're pretty much brand new to this, you're looking at about a 3-year commitment. Our longest program is a 3-year program that combines the art training with the technical training for a total of 3 years. If you're coming to us and you already have the art training in place and you're really just looking for the skill set that's going to get you hired, you could be looking at our 2-year program, which is mainly technical. And again, the other option would be just to take individual classes that happen on nights and weekends. And that could be maybe, you know, 3 months, 6 months, or more, depending on the pace and depending on how aggressive you take it.
How big are the classes? How many students are in one class?
That's a good question. A lot of it depends on the type of class that we're offering, but we pretty much cap it anywhere from 12 to 15 seats per class. In fact, if you were to come to Hollywood and take a tour of the facilities, which anybody can do who's listening, you'd see that the classrooms actually don't facilitate more than 15 people, and in many cases don't facilitate more than 12. And the reason for that is obviously to really minimize the number of people that are in a classroom and to maximize the amount of time students have with a teacher, you know. So this idea of some big, you know, lecture room with 300 students is not something that would really work for what we're teaching. This industry is very much hands-on. It's about what you're learning from people that are doing this stuff professionally, but it's also about the reputation that you earn while you're here. So, you know, the contacts that you make, the networking that goes into being in this environment, all very, very important. And having really small class sizes is something that I think nurtures the potential for that.
Yeah, and again, we're talking to Brian Bradford, who's the Director of Admissions at the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. And before we take a break, last question for you, Brian, is what kind of students does Gnomon look for?
Well, again, you know, anybody can sign up and take a class, but we do some initial counseling on the front end to make sure that these classes are right for you and you're not throwing your money away if you don't know how to turn on a computer. So we do try to figure out if this is a good idea for you if you want to do 1 or 2 classes. But in terms of getting accepted into a program, there's a lot of things we're looking for. You know, we're looking for somebody who we are going to be able to place into a job at the end of 2 or 3 years worth of training. So as your portfolio is really the strongest indicator of your ability to do well here. We are also looking at your personality, at your maturity, at your commitment to this program, your level of enthusiasm, and all this stuff is kind of a way to get an idea of if you're appropriate for this program. And again, that question, a big question that we're asking ourselves, even in the first day of these appointments, is this somebody that is going to do well and have a career and ultimately represent Gnomon in the industry when they get a job at, a Pixar or a Disney or an EA, and everybody knows they came from Gnomon.
All right, so again, we're talking to Brian Bradford. We'll continue the conversation in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.
The Geek Speak Radio Show. We'll be right back.
What do you really know about the life of Walt Disney? Okay, you may know some things about Mickey and Disneyland, but if you think you know more than that, feel free to say something now. We thought so. If you want to get to know the Walt and Disney, the risk-taking and always inventive man behind the magic, visit the Walt Disney Family Museum, filled with interactive stories, movies, music, and original animation in the Presidio, San Francisco.
So how much do you know about Walt Disney? Everyone knows Mickey, but do you know his birthday? The name of Walt Disney's first animation studio? Here's a hint. It wasn't the Walt Disney Studios. Your knowledge of everything Disney will get you a family fun pack, which includes a visit to the Walt Disney Family Museum at the Presidio in San Francisco and a Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Just answer 4 Disney trivia questions and you may be one of the random weekly winners chosen throughout the month of November. The questions will be asked on the show and posted on the Geek Speak Radio Show Facebook page. Just post your correct answers and you may be the lucky winner of 4 tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum and a special Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Plus, you'll get to see the new Disney Artists Holiday Wishes exhibition, making its debut this month. Get all the details at geekspeakradioshow.com.
Back to the Geek Speak Radio Show. Now back to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Geek Speak Radio Show. Having a conversation with Brian Bradford, Director of Admissions at the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. Links are up on the Geek Speak Radio Show links page if you guys want to, like Brian said, take a tour there. But if you really want to do VFX, this is the place to go. So, Brian, let's get a little bit more into the staff now. Tell me about the staff and instructors at Gnomon.
Well, it's actually a requirement in order to teach here, you need to not only be a working professional, but you need to be a relevant working professional, which is something that is obviously somewhat subjective. But in order to teach here, we need to look at your resume and really get the idea that you're somebody that is going to bring a level of stature to the classroom and to Gnomon. We really require you to be in the industry for at least 3 years, but to have an impressive list of title, meaning if you're working on films, we want to see those films and recognize them, and you need to be regarded highly in the industry as well. So someone working in a low-level job, who's worked on a few projects and may have an IMDb account, wouldn't automatically be eligible to come teach at a premier visual effects school like ours. You really do need to prove yourself and be close to an industry veteran, but one that is still very, very relevant. The reason for that, obviously, is to expose students to that. And let me just say, I've gone through school and had teachers who were completely irrelevant in their field, but very inspirational and very great people. At the time in my life when I'm 19 or 20, having access to somebody like that was really great. But you get to a certain point, I think, in your education when you become a little older, you're a little more focused, and you, I think, require less people like that and more people that are, potentially more connected and in the industry, even if they may not be as likable as that teacher you had in your senior year of high school. So it's really first and foremost about surrounding yourself with people who are currently getting paid to do what you want to do, and that is really the best way to gain exposure and to figure out how to really market yourself to this industry based on that exposure.
I would add to that, actually, not only are you be relevant with the work you do now, but also because you're aware of all the trends happening in the industries, right?
Right, and that's a good point. I mean, anybody can pick up a software book and learn the software to a certain level, but if you really don't know how the software is being used from Studio A to Studio B or what Studio A is looking for in a demo reel or portfolio versus Studio B, then you're really at a loss. And one of the things that I find talking to students coming from all over the world, even really, really talented students, is that they tend to sort of, mass email or mass submit their artwork to these studios that they want to work for. And what often happens is these studios are getting hundreds of these emails or parcels a day of all this artwork. It becomes really a hassle to go through all this and try to find some superstar to work for you. And it's not really how the industry works. If I'm at a studio and I realize that I need 3 more animators on this project that we've just picked up, I'm not going to go through the 1,000 pieces of mail that we've just received last month that are in crates in some room. I'm going to get on my phone and I'm going to call somebody who I know is connected to lots of young talent. And that's really what Gnomon tries to do. We try to be that networking hub. We try to be the people that pick up the phone and say, yeah, we got 3 animators, and because of our pedigree, you know that they're good enough. Let's set up some interviews, and you can see if their personalities mesh with your studio environment.
Yeah, as the old saying goes, it's who you know, not just what you know.
Right. It's who you know, not what you know, and it's also what you know from who you know. Because in an industry like this, there's not as much information online about the inner workings of these studios. You can do a lot of research, but nothing really compares to the information you're going to get from somebody who works at one of these studios when you're talking to them as a peer.
Yeah, I can liken that actually to what I do, radio. I've been doing radio since I was 11 years old. And it's the same thing. I always tell, when people ask me, how do I get into radio, I always say the same thing is, take the classes, learn the basics, but nothing is more valuable than doing an internship at a radio station, because you get to see it in action and you see the trends, you see everything that the program directors and everybody wants. So you know exactly what to do when you're ready to go out there and make a living there.
Right, and I think that applies to a lot of different industries. And I think on a more basic level, I think it's just good advice to say, if you want to get really good at something, surround yourself with people that are better than you. And what I find a lot of times is that you'll find some really hotshot artists coming from some small town school, and that's great and all, but they're not challenged and they're not getting better. And it can be humbling to surround yourself with Hollywood talent, but that's the only way you kind of rise to their level.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier the students get tours of some of the local studios there, video game studios and film studios. But do you get guest speakers at Gnomon?
We do, absolutely. That's something that we're becoming much more involved with. I mean, we've been doing it since we started, but we have lots of making of events that we will host at least a couple of times a month, where we'll take a movie that is relevant or in theaters or just past that, and we'll bring in some very key people to the look and the feel of that film or video game, someone very key to the production of the project, and have them give a presentation where they're showing samples or where we have a round table of different people giving their insights about that production, and host these events for free, not just to our students but for the public. The one we have coming up is actually the making of Real Steel, the movie Real Steel, and that's Thursday, November 10th, just one example. Again, these are free. You can RSVP online. But we've worked with Pixar. We've worked many times with Disney, with Blizzard many times, who we have a great relationship with, to feature some of these projects. And this is really great for students to show up and not just be wowed and inspired by the artwork, but to really gain an understanding of real-world production and see how the different studios are actually doing it. People have this idea that something is done one specific way out here in the industry, and the reality is it's done a lot of different ways. And this is a really good way to really understand that a lot better.
Yeah, networking, most important thing.
Right, networking. Even if it's a case where you are taking your first 3D class and you're nowhere near the level of the guys that you're studying under, just to be able to go up to one of these people who designed a Star Wars character, or who is responsible for the character model of the monster in Super 8 or something like that to shake their hand and say, hey, I'm a first-term student. Do you have any advice for me? Or here's my business card. It's a small industry. It doesn't seem like it, but it is pretty small. And if you acquire a reputation over time of being somebody who's very personable and very eager and hardworking, people will remember you, even if you're just that kid in the intro class.
Yeah. Now, one thing I don't like about the radio industry is that once you do get a little bit of success, a lot of people get big egos, and the old saying is like, "No, kid, who you're talking to? Why are you talking to me?" Does that happen in the VFX industry?
Yeah, sure. I think it happens pretty much anywhere where you have insecure people. Artists by nature tend to sometimes be, not the most social creatures, especially if you combine computer artists to that. So there is that element of the social interaction, I think, that some students do need to work on, and it's obviously a criteria that we look for when we're accepting people. But you're always going to find someone who thinks that they're the next George Lucas coming through here, and I think that whereas it's always going to be around, I think in my experience the most talented people that I have met in this industry have been extremely humble, and that tends to be one of the more or one of the reasons why they're so good is because they haven't forgotten that they're always students in this industry. When you commit to something in the arts or anything creative, I'm sure radio as well, you're basically committing to being a student for life and always learning and always improving. And as long as you keep that in your mind, I don't know if there's room to think you're the best thing on earth, if you're always pushing to get better. Yeah,
that's exactly what I tell anybody that tells me, and interns that I've had also. And I always tell them, going on our geek tendencies here, I quote Qui-Gon from Phantom Menace, there's always a bigger fish. Always remember that.
Yeah, exactly. I could probably use that for my industry, too.
Again, so we're talking to Brian Bradford, Director of Admissions from the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. The links are up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com in our link section if you want to go there, or you're thinking of, maybe I want to do this and you're not sure where to start. Good place to start right here. Can you tell me, Brian, some success stories from alumni from the Gnomon School?
Well, yeah, that could be a long conversation, but I'd have to narrow down just a little bit. I mean, again, we have over 93% placement, meaning we are able to place people at mid-level positions doing what they came here to do within 6 months of graduation, and we've been able to do that pretty well, if you ask me. Students graduate and go to small studios, they go to big studios, they go to film studios, they go to game studios. It really all depends on where they want to go and what they want to do. And sometimes that changes while you're here. You might show up thinking you want to be an animator on a Harry Potter film until you talk to an animator on a Harry Potter film and say, hey, while that's a cool job, it may not be me. I'd rather do feature animation, or I'd rather do character modeling or texturing or effects for video games or something like that. But just, based on the last couple of months, we've had lots of people placed at studios like Blizzard. We've had people go to ILM, which is really great. ILM is regarded as really, in some ways, the last stop on the pipeline of success in this industry, Industrial Light and Magic, that is. Mm-hmm. And so that's really great to see, a 21-year-old student graduate Gnomon and get a job at ILM. Students have been placed at Legacy Effects, Bad Robot with J.J. Abrams, who actually had some really kind words to say about Gnomon. You can find that on our website. But of course, the multitude of game studios and film studios that people haven't heard of. There's probably 10 or 12 studios that everybody's heard of. Disney, Pixar, EA. And that's really common. And those tend to be the areas that people want to go into when they start. But what they come to realize is that there's over 2,000 film and game studios in Los Angeles alone. And that's really the heart and soul of the industry, And depending on your personality and what you want to do, you may fit in better at a small production studio where you're doing more things, creatively speaking. Or if you really have it, in your mind that you want to work on Thor or Cowboys and Aliens or Rango or something like that, It may be a case that you're doing one thing. You're a specialist doing something really well, but only really doing one thing at a bigger studio with more people on that production. So a lot of this depends on the decisions you make while you're here, based on the people you know and based on what you learn about the industry.
We're going to have a lot of up-and-coming students, VFX and writers and actors, everything, listen to this episode, because that's what we're going to deal with for the rest of the episode. What kind of advice would you have to potential VFX artists or somebody who may be just sort of thinking about, that's what I want to do?
Well, it depends on what their background is. If they have an extensive art background, I think that's pretty much, you've covered a lot of it. If you have the art background, I mean, that tends to be the biggest thing if you want to pursue this. So assuming that you don't have an art background, but you've always felt like an artist and you've always felt creative, but just have lacked the structured training, the first piece of advice easily would be, put yourself in an environment that is artistic, start drawing, start being creative, visually creative, and start testing the waters and seeing if it's something that sticks. The first step to this is always going to be developing your art skills. The technical part of it, downloading the software and playing around with it, that's important too. But realize that the software is going to change. The software is always going to be there, in some form. The most important part of this is developing a really strong core. It's Gnomon's philosophy that you want to approach the technology as an artist and not the other way around. You don't want to say, hey, I'm really good at computers, I can become an artist because the software is now at that level. That's not necessarily true. And while there are some jobs in this industry that are much more technical, that computer geeks can definitely get if they're not as artistic, the majority of jobs that Gnomon is training for are more on the creative side. They're more about creating creative assets, creative content for film and games. So if you're talking about programming and stuff like that, then yes, that's definitely a more technical path that you don't need to go take figure drawing classes for. But if you want to be the person designing characters or creating, character models or environments or something like that, or animating, then it's really going to be about developing your artistic eye first and foremost. Beyond that, I think what's important is to just get yourself into a class. Start with either a drawing class or a technical class to see if this is something you like before committing. Because in the end, this is, a really lucrative career, but you do work really hard. Production hours can be really taxing. So it does really need to be something that you do because you're inspired and you're passionate. If you're looking at this as an industry to get in because it's huge and it's lucrative, but you're not as really into film and games, then you may burn out after a year or two. It may not be for you. It really does need to be driven by the passion for the projects that you're working on, Yeah,
and again, we're talking to Brian Bradford, Director of Admissions from the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. Links are up on GeekSpeakRadioshow.com in the links section. Where else would they be? And Brian, one last thing is tell us a little bit about you, what you were doing before coming to Gnomon.
That's a good question. Well, I have an art background as well. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody here on staff has an art background. My particular art background was in illustration, a little graphic design. I hadn't really dabbled too much in 3D until I came to Gnomon, but I'd always been an artist and always been spread pretty thin doing different things. I think more than anything, though, it was my background in community youth counseling and specifically art programs in the community in which I was a mentor. So I got really comfortable talking to people about art and comfortable talking to parents and that sort of thing. So I think it was a marriage between my appreciation and my knowledge of art and my ability to talk to people and my the fact that I love doing that, that sort of I was able to mold into this position here at Gnomon. Everyone has a different sort of background here, which is interesting. But again, I think the thing that links us is that we all speak the art language. We all know how to speak to artists. So I think, again, that is, I think, what people find when they come here that's really refreshing, opposed to some other schools which tend to be more corporate, or a lot of times the admissions people have no idea what the heck they're talking about when they're talking about art classes and things like that. When you come to Gnomon, like I said earlier, the people answering the phone can answer a lot of your technical questions. So I think that's something to consider.
Yeah. And let me ask you, Brian, the person, not Brian, the director of admissions at Gnomon, do you think this 3D is just a gimmick or it's here to stay?
Well, first of all, 3D can be two different things. 3D can be 3D film like 3D technology or 3D software, which is like Maya, Softimage, and 3ds Max, are responsible for creating movies like Toy Story and special effects, visual effects. So that's not with the glasses. That's just this idea that we're seeing things that look to be in 3 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Stereoscopic 3D is when you put the glasses on and you're watching the film and it's popping out at you. That part is a fad, obviously. I mean, in its current state, I think. I think audiences are already getting a little tired of that. But I am interested to see where it is taken in the future. I think definitely something that is more interactive and something that the audience feels more connected to visually is the direction that things should be going. I don't know if wearing uncomfortable plastic glasses in the theater and straining your eyes is really the best example of where the technology has finally landed. I think we're still moving, and obviously the studios have really made a lot of money on pushing this, everything being released in 3D, but I think audiences are kind of aware that, it's been pretty desperate attempts in some cases just to make a really bad sort of 3D experience, call it 3D, slap it on a billboard and sell a lot of tickets. It's not always the most memorable film experience. I saw Avatar in 3D, and I walked out thinking that I had seen something really new and exciting, and then since then I've seen other 3D movies and felt like the colors were just, washed out, and my eyes hurt. So I think it still has a long way to go, but that's not to say that it's not exciting,
Yeah. So you can learn that 3D, everything else at the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. Again, the links are up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. Brian, thanks a lot, and you're welcome back anytime to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Absolutely. Nice chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Okay, so we'll take a little break, and we'll continue. A little surprise for you. You just stay right there, and you'll find out what that is.
The Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.
What do you really know about the life of Walt Disney? Okay, you may know some things about Mickey and Disneyland, but if you think you know more than that, feel free to say something now. We thought so. If you want to get to know the Walt and Disney, the risk-taking and always inventive man behind the magic, visit the Walt Disney Family Museum, filled with interactive stories, movies, music, and original animation in the Presidio, San Francisco.
So how much do you know about Walt Disney? Everyone knows Mickey, but do you know his birthday? The name of Walt Disney's first animation studio? Here's a hint. It wasn't the Walt Disney Studios. Your knowledge of everything Disney will get you a family fun pack, which includes a visit to the Walt Disney Family Museum at the Presidio in San Francisco and a Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Just answer 4 Disney trivia questions and you may be one of the random weekly winners chosen throughout the month of November. The questions will be asked on the show and posted on the Geek Speak Radio Show Facebook page. Just post your correct answers and you may be the lucky winner of 4 tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum and a special Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Plus, you'll get to see the new Disney Artists Holiday Wishes exhibition, making its debut this month. Get all the details at GeekSpeakRadioShow.com.
Get ready to speak geek.
God bless the geek.
Now back to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
We're back on the Geek Speak Radio Show. His kind of music, but Romo's not here. Just Henry. Romo actually, like I said, texted me, and he's at the library down the street picking his book for the Geek Speak Radio Show book club, which we will do in just a little bit. But let's continue. We just finished talking to the Gnomon School in Hollywood, California. Those of you who want to be visual effects artists, that's a good place to start right there. Again, the links are up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. Now, a few weeks ago, actually, where are we? Month ago, almost actually. Kind of hard to believe that the year is almost over. A month ago, we were here at APE, Alternative Press Expo here in San Francisco. Met some really, really cool people. One of them is on the phone with us. His name is Alexis Fajardo, writer, artist of Kid Beowulf. Alexis, welcome to the Geek Speak Radio Show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So first of all, tell everybody who may not have heard about it yet, tell us about Kid Beowulf.
Yeah, so Kid Beowulf is my all-ages graphic novel series, and it is inspired by the old epic poem Beowulf that some of your listeners may have been forced to read in high school or college. And I take the epic poem and do a bit of a twist. I make Beowulf and Grendel, who are arch enemies, and I've turned them into 12-year-old twin brothers. And so the first book is the origin story. It's called Kid Beowulf and the Bloodbound Oath, and that kind of explains how and why Beowulf and Grendel are twins, goes back through their lineage, and then sets the stage for their adventures across Europe and Asia, where they're going to go to France and Spain and Italy, all the way out to Japan, meet the various heroes from those countries, get into other adventures, and along the way kind of discover where their place amongst all those heroes and what their ultimate destiny is, which is to one day fight each other. So it's essentially a prequel of sorts to Beowulf.
When did you get the idea for this story? When did you actually sit down and start writing it? Yeah,
that's a good question. Kid Beowulf has been brewing for a while now. It took root as a mini comic. My first career as a cartoonist was as a comic strip artist. I did a web comic for years that was unrelated to Beowulf, but I did it in high school and college, and had dreams of being a syndicated cartoonist. And so it was just a 4-panel comic strip. And a friend of mine had wanted me to do this sort of action-adventure series, and he knew that I loved mythology and legends, and he just said to come up with a fun idea. And at that time, I'd been rereading Beowulf, because that's what geeks like me do, and that's kind of where the notion struck me. Like, Beowulf is one of these heroes that you really can't imagine as a kid. He kind of comes full grown with the helmet and the warrior sheen, and just to think of him as a kid just seemed instantly kind of funny to me. So it really started as a mini comic, and I really had no illusions to take it further than that. But as I started to write it and draw it, the story wanted to be told, and it wanted to be bigger, and it eventually turned into this graphic novel that I originally self-published, and then brought it to a publisher and had it relaunch the series in 2008. So I've been doing it for maybe 10 odd years in one form or another, and it's only now where it's really kind of looking the way I want it to, and kind of getting it out there into people's hands.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but why the Beowulf characters instead of coming up with original stories and characters?
That's funny. A buddy of mine was just asking me this very same question this morning, because we were talking about just storytelling and whatnot, and I have always loved these stories, and I grew up reading all these classic myths, whether it was the Odyssey or the Iliad or Gilgamesh, all this stuff, and those stories just speak to me in a way that other stories don't, and I think that if there's a way that I can introduce them to a new readership, kids who may have not been familiar with Beowulf or all these other heroes, then I want to do that, and because I think the stories are important enough, and it's all for me about creating a fun action-adventure story and pointing new readers toward the original source material, because it is so fun to read and riveting, and they're kind of like the proto-superheroes.
Yeah, that is true, actually, and I think most people today, when you say Beowulf, they think back to, when was it, the not cartoon, but the CGI film that came out not too long ago. Right, the Zemeckis debacle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll forget about that and turn to Kid Beowulf. And you're right, they are, to some people, a little boring, but someone like you, like me, because actually I like the stories when I was younger. I used to read those. I guess the familiarity with the characters itself, does that allow you to, what's the word, sort of breathe the different life into them, or paint them in a different picture than what people are used to seeing?
Yeah, I think a lot of these stories, Beowulf, the Song of Roland, the Odyssey, people hear those names and they immediately conjure up these professors with tweed jackets and elbow patches, and you're kind of looking at them from a distance. But really, you got to remember these were the first and foremost just entertainments that people told these stories to each other around a campfire, and that's kind of why we still go back to them today, is because they had this primal resonance. I mean, Beowulf is the story of a monster slayer. He's this dude who goes around killing mirror monsters and sea hags and dragons, and he wins gold, and there are wenches, and there's mead, and all this stuff that is just palpable. And when you read it in its original epic poetry in its form, it's so visual, which I think is why it kind of lends itself in some form to comics, because it's just such a beautiful way to tell a story. And so I really just want to make these stories accessible and kind of wipe away that veneer of you have to be a scholar or have a PhD to enjoy these stories, because really that's not the case. And they're down and dirty, and there's arm ripping, and what 8-year-old kid's not going to love that?
Exactly. When you started writing it, was it from the beginning? Was the plan to make it for kids, or when did that happen?
Yeah, it's actually, aside from the title Kid Beowulf, I don't even consider it specifically for kids. When I say all ages, it really is all ages. I grew up reading Asterix and Tintin and Bone and these stories that look cartoony and but whose subject matter, resonates with a 6-year-old and a 60-year-old. And that's really kind of, those are the books, even Star Wars. There's a story that's all ages, and people of different stripes can totally engage with it. So those are really the cues that I look to, and the types of stories that I want to emulate, where it can just be a story for everyone. And so it's so my style, as I said, it's cartoony. It's got a sort of an Asterix vibe, but the subject matter is also there's some serious points, and when I can put in a gag, I try and put in a gag. The violence is sort of on a Looney Tunes level, but at the same time, I don't want to defang the great epics, because there was, as I said before, there's a lot of violence to them. So it's a delicate balancing act, and trying to figure out where my series lies is kind of the trick for me, is to throw in a lot of action and a lot of humor, and also a serious story if I can.
Yeah, and again, we're talking to Alexis Fajardo, writer and artist of the Kid Beowulf series. 2 books out. Are they out in bookstores, Alexis, or where can we find them?
You can order them at Barnes & Noble and whatever Borders are still around, and as well as independent booksellers. You can get it at Amazon. So the first book is Kid Beowulf and the Bloodbound Oath, and that's, as I said, the origin story. And then book 2 came out last spring, and that's called Kid Beowulf and the Song of Roland. And in that one, they go to France, and they meet Charlemagne and all of his knights, and get into a big swashbuckler. And I'm in the middle of book 3 right now, which is called Kid Beowulf versus El Cid, and that's slated to come out next year.
And Bowler Hat Comics is publishing Kid Beowulf right now. How many publishers did you approach before Bowler Hat took a chance on it?
Boy, I took it everywhere. I shopped it around to Scholastic and Image, and a lot of the bigger New York publishers. Anybody who's doing graphic novels at the time, I was pitching it up in the early 2000s, and this was sort of before the big all ages boon of comics took shape, before Bone was being repurposed by Scholastic. So I don't think people were just aware of the great all ages stuff that was out there, and then, at the same time, my stuff, as I said, I self-published it, and that early edition was my early artwork. So I don't think it was really as good as it's become. But thankfully, I found this publisher who saw the merit in the work and wanted to take a chance with it, and so we relaunched and did a entirely new edition, and in that time, the artwork, I think, really grew, and with it, my storytelling. So I'm really happy with where it's turned out, and that I landed with Bowler Hat.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's an easy road to travel, but how does one go about self-publishing?
Yeah, it is very tough, and I have a lot of friends who are self-publishers, and they're the kind of the one-man or one-woman wrecking crew for their title. And the first and foremost, I think you have to have a clear idea of what it is, the story that you want to tell, whether it's in the all ages genre, or if it's in the superhero genre, or if it's in the autobio. You kind of have to look at the landscape, see the other books that are out there, look at those artists whose work you admire, and kind of see how they put the book together, if it's like a digest size, or if it's like a traditional 6x9 book, or if they started out publishing online and then collecting as a trade. There are tons of different ways to do it, and I really started out by just kind of looking to those artists who I liked, and kind of emulating what they did and their delivery structure, and there are lots of hits and misses. I think I did 3 or 4 early editions of Kid Beowulf in different permutations, and like whether it was a mini comic or a zine or a graphic novel digest size, before I kind of figured out the right way to get it out to people.
Yeah, on this week's episode, we're going to be talking to a lot of up-and-coming artists, writers, and visual effects artists, like we did in the last segment. And if there are some people out there who have an idea, they're probably asking the question that I'm going to ask you right now, and that is, while some of them may, the answer may be different for particular publishers, but what, in your mind, what do you think publishers are looking for today?
Boy, that's a good question. The first thing that popped into my head is this quote from William Goldman, who wrote this great book called Adventures in the Screen Trade. And he was a screenplay writer. He wrote All the President's Men and Princess Bride and some others. And sort of the golden rule that he talks about when it comes to Hollywood is that nobody knows anything, meaning that nobody knows what story is going to sell. Nobody knows what movie is going to catch the imagination of an audience. And I would say, that probably goes for publishing too, especially nowadays, where really the landscape has totally changed in that, there's this, iPad and these tablets, and there's this digital publishing, and then you've got the old model, which is just,
print.
Print. Yeah, exactly. And how do people deal with that? Do you go one way or do you go the other? And I think that's sort of clouded the overall judgment of, first and foremost, you just write a good story, and that's hard enough as it is. But I think you really just have to be passionate about your project and really focused and determined in getting it done and producing work. And that work may not be terrific. A lot of people's first work is bad work, but you're kind of figuring it out, and you have to just sort of embrace the fact that your early work is going to be rough, and it's going to take some fine-tuning. It's going to take some years to chip away. But if you've got that idea that you really are passionate about, and you stick with it, I think eventually it'll start to formulate. And that's, I think, what a publisher is going to look for is a book and a story and a creator that really will defend their work and want to improve upon it. I know it sounds all very vague, and there isn't really any concrete answer to the question you gave me. But I think, in those grand terms, that's really where it comes down to is you just gotta grind it out and just always try and make your artwork better than it was the day before.
Maybe I'm just old. Okay, I am old. But when I think books, I just think print, but you brought up a good point right there that nowadays you also have to think, am I going to do print or ebook as they call it, or both, right?
Right. Yeah, and actually just a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned Ape before, and that weekend the digital edition of Kid Beowulf was launched through this app called the Comics Jukebox, which if you have an iPad, you can download the app for free, and then within the app you can purchase the issues of Kid Beowulf. But it was something I've been wanting to do for a while, because for me, really the book is where it's at. Feeling the paper and that's kind of the model that I work toward is producing a book. But I'd be an idiot to think that people don't read digital comics or they don't read them on their iPad or their tablet. So I really needed to get the book out that way for the people who wanted to read it that way. So I basically took the first book and I divided it into 3 chapters, and you can download each one for $1.99. And my book is originally in black and white, but what I did for the digital edition was put a halftone color to it, so it sort of has like a greenish hue, which is kind of the theme of the first cover of the book. And it's just another way to read the book, and it works just as well as print. In some ways, it's a different reading experience. The colors are very bright, and I think it works really well on the iPad. But I think that's what you have to do. You have to do it as print. You have to do it as digital. You have to do it as a webcomic, because people are gonna want to read it the way they want to read it, and it just behooves an author to provide it to their audience whichever way they prefer to read it. One is no better than the other. It's just a different way to read the story.
Yeah, but the bottom line, and I'm sure publishers will agree with this, is it does have to be entertaining also, no matter how you deliver it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so again, we're talking to Alexis Fajardo, writer and artist of the Kid Beowulf series. Last question, Alexis, is what advice would you give to any aspiring writers or artists that are listening to us right now?
Boy, not too different from what I mentioned before, is just stick with it. I've been working on this particular project for years. Prior to that, I'd wanted to do a comic strip, but I always wanted to be in comics, and it's taken a while. I kind of feel I'm still got a long way to go before I'll be happy with the work I've been doing. But whether it's comics or movies or music or any kind of art form, you just have to, as I said before, grind it out and stick with it, and your work will get better. And as your work gets better, people will notice, and they'll want to be a part of that work. So.
Yeah, it seems to be a recurring theme in everybody we've talked to is you have to have a passion and stick with it.
Exactly, yep.
So again, Alexis Fajardo, writer and artist of the Kid Beowulf series. Have the links up on geekspeakradioshow.com in our links section. And like Alexis mentioned, you can get them on Amazon and your bookstores, or is it available on your website?
Yeah, and that's kidbeowulf.com, and if they order it through my website, I'm happy to sign and do a sketch form in there as well.
Yeah, so there you go. So again, Alexis, thanks a lot for coming on, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much.
Everybody stay right there. We'll be right back.
The Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.
What do you really know about the life of Walt Disney? Okay, you may know some things about Mickey and Disneyland, but if you think you know more than that, feel free to say something now. We thought so. If you want to get to know the Walt and Disney, the risk-taking and always inventive man behind the magic, visit the Walt Disney Family Museum, filled with interactive stories, movies, music, and original animation in the Presidio, San Francisco.
So how much do you know about Walt Disney? Everyone knows Mickey, but do you know his birthday? The name of Walt Disney's first animation studio? Here's a hint. It wasn't the Walt Disney Studios. Your knowledge of everything Disney will get you a family fun pack, which includes a visit to the Walt Disney Family Museum at the Presidio in San Francisco and a Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Just answer 4 Disney trivia questions and you may be one of the random weekly winners chosen throughout the month of November. The questions will be asked on the show and posted on the Geek Speak Radio Show Facebook page. Just post your correct answers and you may be the lucky winner of 4 tickets to the Walt Disney Family Museum and a special Walt Disney Family Museum souvenir. Plus, you'll get to see the new Disney Artists Holiday Wishes exhibition, making its debut this month. Get all the details at geekspeakradioshow.com.